tonight we are going to be painting this mistletoe. I don't know if it's really mistletoe, it's more like holly leaves with holly berries that we are going to be painting. It feels like a very Christmassy scene, and we're in that winter holiday, and these are motifs that are perfect in a winter holiday. So as you can see, I have already traced this out. So if you haven't already, go ahead and trace this out. Normally, I like to use my Arch watercolor paper. However, tonight I am using an Italian watercolor paper because that was what I already had in the size of a square, and I wanted this to be a square piece. We will begin by color mapping, and we'll begin by color mapping the lightest part that we see. So there is a very slight little yellow here and a very slight little yellow here. And I might even bring that in here as well, and this spot right here. So I'm going to go ahead and mix that color in my tray, and I'm going to use my round 6 for that. So I'm taking my Princeton Heritage Series round 6, and I'm going to go ahead and grab some yellow and begin picking up my yellow. And it's light right here, so I'm going to go ahead and just lightly bring in that yellow. It's a little bit light over here. Bring that in. And let's see where else. I might bring a little bit in here. This is probably going to get covered up, but that's okay. I'm going to bring it in here for now, and maybe even a little over here. Now, while I'm waiting for that to dry, I want to work on my berries, and I'm going to cover the berries in a very light red to begin with, and I'm just using the standard red. I'm going to go ahead and just paint all of the berries this very light red color. And I'm painting it the lightest color. It's actually going to be a little bit darker than what I see in the picture, but that's okay. I want to get this down. Okay, so we're gonna let those berries dry, and then I really need to let anything that's touching these wet areas dry. And then everything that I would do next is touching something that is currently still wet. So I'm going to wait and come back in just a bit after this dries and start with the next layer. Let's try this stem right here. Let's grab this round 6 here, and I'm going to use my Van Dyke brown and begin to bring that stem in. And I'm going to bring some green in as well. The green that I think I want to start with, I'm going to start with the Hooker's green, and I'm going to add some water to this so that it's going to begin with a light color. I'm going to bring this light green really over everything now. Just color mapping, glazing as you would call it. This is the technique of glazing, where we bring just the lightest color over everything. And I could pick up a larger brush is what I want to get. I'm picking up a larger brush to cover more surface area because I can just do it a little more quickly. The brush had more water on it than I had wanted it to, so I'm trying to move this water around because it's just a little too much. It's giving it this little wet on wet effect over here. And that wasn't what I was going for, but that's kind of what I've done in that area. And it will be okay. This is just the first very light layer, so it's not going to affect too much. It's just going to make the drying time a little faster than I had anticipated. And I'm going to just move the paper a little bit like that. Grab my green, grab a little more water, and bring that in here. Okay. Now, again, we're going to let that dry. I am going to pick up a little bit more of this Van Dyke brown and kind of bring in these shadows over here where I see it just a little darker. I'm going to resume painting the berries, and I'm going to just take the red, and I am careful to leave the highlights. That's the reason why we did that lighter color first, right? So we're going to make sure we leave those highlights there, and we've got those nice little spots, round spots. There's lots of little highlights that I see happening. I forgot to put in the highlights on this guy, so I'm gonna just have to imagine them in, think like that here, and I think there's one here, and there's a round spot there. I'm just imagining those highlights there, and as you can see, there's a little highlight on this side. So some of these are still touching things that are wet, and I'm just giving it space to dry before I jump in there with wet color that will bleed into itself. These are really starting to pop, and that is so much fun. That's, what happens when you start to bring in shadows and dark and light. I picked this particular photo purely because I wanted to do these berries. I'm not even kidding. I loved how I saw the color, and now there is some shadow back here. We're going to want to go back and fill in. I'm thinking maybe a little violet, but everything's going to need to dry before we do that. These are coming along nicely. And now let's darken up some of these areas. So I am, again, using my Winsor and Newton, and I want to darken up some of these spaces that I see back here. So there's this guy. I'm going to darken this up back here. Let's see, what else can I get? I think I can get this guy right here. So it's a very strong leaf. It's very dark over on this side. Okay, that's starting to really look good. So we're just bringing a lot of depth in, doing these layers. I think over here may be dry enough. I want to lighten this guy up. I'm going to add a lot more water. And even maybe a little sap green to this. It will mute it just a touch. So that is a little bit darker. I'm gonna darken it up a little bit over here where I see that it would have been darker. Even in here a little bit more. Okay, time to tackle this guy. So I think I'm just getting a little bit more of that hooker green on my brush and adding a little bit of water, and I'm going to go ahead and bring that in here. And that darker bit over here, but maybe not quite as dark as the leaf next to it. Just leaving some of these highlights. Okay, I like how that one is looking too. Now this guy is really dark and I'm gonna let it be really dark. I'm gonna add a little bit of, I think, Windsor green to this. So I'm gonna just get a little Windsor green on my brush here, picking that up. And just bringing that in, letting the edges be a little bit of a highlight. Really strong, deep color here. The Windsor green is a little bit bluer, so it's dark, it's got a bit of a blue tinge to it. And it's just, I'm just gonna leave these edges. And it's still pretty dark in here, so I want to use that Windsor and darken it up right here, still pulling that in. And there's a little bit of a highlight on this one, on this side of the leaf, and I did kind of pencil that in a bit. So I'm going to make sure I keep that integrity of that portion of the leaf here. And I want to darken up the highlight a little bit, but I'm going to need these dark spots then to dry so that I can do that. You'll see what I mean when I go in there and do it in a little bit. And this guy on this side is also pretty dark. There's a tiny bit of a highlight right there. Leave that be. I just got some water on my brush and pulled that through. I'm going to do that same thing over here. It's kind of, and I'm going to actually bring a little bit more paint in on this one and bring that over like so. And there we go. That just wasn't dark enough over here. So pulling that in to look a little bit more like a highlight and less like just an open spot. And I want to get this piece a little darker. Now, on this guy over here, it is dark too, so I want to bring in the dark shadow. right here. And leave that little highlight right here if we want to. Okay, and I'm gonna do that same thing where I just get some water on and just kind of close this in a little bit more so the highlight looks just a little bit more natural. Okay, and this little side over here of the leaf, I want to darken that up with like a shadow. I think I like where the leaves have landed, and I'm going to just let them stay there. There is a little green back here, I think, and I'm going to bring that in. And I do want to bring in a little bit of crimson to this right here to just set it back a little bit. And I'm going to bring that same crimson in on this spot right here. And I'm going to bring in crimson on this right here. And let's see where else I might want a little crimson. I might want a little crimson over here. Okay, now I definitely also want to bring in some Van Dyke brown to these little spots right here. Okay, I think this guy is done. I hope that you have enjoyed this fun little tutorial on our botanical for the winter season, and I will look forward to painting with you again next week.